3 weeks ago, I woke up in a body that was not mine. And the hardest part to explain is this: it was mine. It was the body I had been begging for in the dark for 20 years, the one I had whispered about to myself in stolen moments, the one I had built in my head so many times I could have drawn it blindfolded. And now that it was real, I was terrified of it. My hands were smaller. My collarbones were softer. The sheets felt different against my skin, like my whole body had been rewired while I slept. And when I finally pushed myself up and walked across the cold floor to the mirror, the woman looking back at me was crying because she knew, the way I knew, that there was no going back. Let me rewind. Because I need you to understand that I did not choose this. Not the way people think. The switch happened the way a door closes in a draft, quiet, sudden, and absolutely final. I was 31 years old, with a job that paid the bills, a tiny apartment with a window that faced a brick wall, and a secret I had carried so long it had grown roots into my bones. Every night I would come home, lock the door, and stand in front of that same mirror, the one with the cracked corner from the night I had thrown a shoe at it, and I would practice. I would tilt my chin. I would soften my shoulders. I would whisper sentences in a voice that was not mine, testing the weight of them. Her name was Well. I never said her name out loud. That felt too real. That felt like giving her permission to exist, and I was not ready to give her anything except the dark and the locked door and the mirror with a cracked corner. But here's the thing about secrets. They do not stay hidden. They leak. They leak in the way you walk when you think no one is watching, the way you hold a cup, the way you look at a dress in a shop window 3 seconds too long, the way you memorize a woman's hands when she gestures, because you are not looking at her the way a man looks at a woman. You are looking at her the way a student looks at a teacher, so you can do it later, alone, in the dark, in front of the cracked mirror. And they leak in the body. The body knows. The body remembers. The body keeps score. For 20 years I had been feeding it a lie, and one night, one ordinary Tuesday night, with rain tapping against the window and a half-eaten bowl of noodles going cold on the table, the body decided it was done waiting. I remember the exact moment. I was standing in front of the mirror, doing my nightly ritual, when I felt something shift. Not in the room. In me. It was like a key turning in a lock I did not know I had. My reflection flickered. I swear to you, it flickered like a bad signal on an old television, like the picture was trying to tune itself into something it had always been meant to be. For one split second, the face in the mirror was not the face I had worn for 31 years. It was softer. The jaw was rounder. The cheeks were fuller. The eyes were the same. I would know them anywhere, but everything around them had rearranged itself, like a photograph being developed in front of me. I blinked. I told myself I was tired. I told myself the light was playing tricks. And then I went to bed, and I did not look at the mirror again for the rest of the night, because I was more afraid of what I might see than of what I already had. I lay in the dark for a long time, listening to the rain, and I remember thinking, very clearly, something has started. And I did not know if it was a beginning or an ending, and I was too afraid to find out. And then I woke up. And the first thing I felt was the weight of my hair against my neck, hair that was longer than it had been when I fell asleep, hair that brushed my shoulders in a way that made my breath catch in my throat. And the second thing I felt was the shape of my own hands, smaller, finer, resting on the pillow like they belonged to someone else. And the third thing I felt was the quiet, terrible certainty that the door had closed. The switch had happened. Not in a lab, not in a machine, not in any of the science fiction ways I had half hoped for when I was 14 and desperate. It had happened the way change always happens, slowly, then all at once. It had happened the way a river carves a canyon, one drop at a time for years, and then one day you look up and the canyon is there, and you cannot remember the land before it. And I was standing on the wrong side of it, looking at the woman in the mirror who was me, and I did not know if I was terrified or relieved, and that confusion, that impossible, screaming confusion, that feeling of two people fighting inside one body, was the first real feeling I had let myself have in years. The mirror, when I finally forced myself to look, was not a horror. That is the part that undid me. It was not a horror. It was a mercy. The woman looking back at me was not beautiful, in the way models are beautiful. She was beautiful in the way that a thing is beautiful when it has finally stopped pretending. Her skin was clear. Her shoulders were soft. Her body was the body I had drawn in the margins of notebooks since I was 14, the one I had never let myself believe could exist, the one I had erased and redrawn 1,000 times because I was ashamed of wanting it. And here it was, wearing my eyes, breathing my breath, standing in my cracked mirror in my tiny apartment, and it was not asking permission. It was just there, the way the truth is just there, the way the sun is just there, whether or not you are ready for it. And I stood there for a long time, and I could not cry. I was too far gone for crying. I just stood there and stared, and I understood that the hardest part was not going to be becoming her. The hardest part was going to be letting go of him. Because here is what nobody tells you about change. Nobody tells you that the person you are leaving behind is still alive. He is still in there, in the back of your head, with his habits and his fears and his ways of walking through the world. He is the one who knows how to be invisible. He is the one who learned at 10 years old that there were words for people like him and that those words were not kind. He is the one who learned to laugh at the jokes, to look at the ground when he walked past a group of boys, because he had learned, the hard way, that being noticed was dangerous. And when you change, you do not kill him. You cannot kill him. He is part of you, the way a scar is part of you, the way a scar is the map of a wound that healed. You have to learn to carry him. You have to learn to thank him for keeping you alive long enough to become the person you were always meant to be. I did not know any of this yet on that first morning. I only knew that I was standing in front of a mirror in a body I had begged for, and that I had never felt more alone in my entire life. And I remember thinking, in that quiet voice in the back of my head, this is what I asked for. This is what I have been asking for since I was a child. And now that I have it, I am terrified, and I do not know if that makes me a coward or just human. The first day was the hardest. I want to be honest with you about that because it is important that you know that it is hard, that it is supposed to be hard, that if it were easy, everyone would do it. I had no clothes. I had a wardrobe full of shirts and trousers that no longer fit the body I was in, the shoulders too wide, the waist too loose, everything hanging off me like a costume from a life I had already left. I stood in front of that open closet for an hour, and I felt something I had not expected. Grief. Grief for the clothes, yes, but also grief for the man who had worn them, the man who had never once in 31 years bought anything that made him feel like himself. I pulled on the smallest shirt I owned, and it still drowned me. I looked in the mirror, and I saw a boy wearing his father's clothes, and I understood that I was going to have to learn everything from the beginning. How to dress, how to move, how to speak, how to exist in a body that was finally honest, and how to be honest back. It was like being born again, except I remembered everything, and the memory made it worse. And that is when I made the decision that changed everything. I looked at the woman in the mirror, at her, at me, at us, and I said, out loud for the first time, okay, if this is real, then I am going to do it properly. I am going to learn. I am going to be her, not as a costume, but as a life. And I am going to start right now. And I did not know it yet, but that was the moment the journey really began. The moment I stopped being a man who was afraid of the woman inside him and started being a woman who was afraid of the world outside her. And the world, as it turned out, was waiting. The first test came before I even left the apartment. It came in the form of a knock on the door, 3 quick knocks, the kind that mean business, and the voice on the other side was the last voice in the world I wanted to hear that morning. It was Mr. Delgado, my landlord, and he had come to check the leaky pipe under the sink that I had been avoiding for 3 weeks. And I stood there, pressed against the inside of the door, my heart hammering against my ribs, because I had not spoken a single word out loud since I woke up, and I did not know what was going to come out of my mouth if I opened it. And I knew in that moment that I had a choice to make, the first of 1,000 choices, and that the choice I made right now in the next 10 seconds would tell me what kind of person I was going to be. I opened the door a crack. Mr. Delgado looked at me, really looked, the way people look when they're trying to place a face they think they should know, and he said, "Oh, sorry." I was looking for the tenant. And that was the moment. I could hide. I could mumble something and close the door, and spend the rest of my life hiding, The way I had spent the first 31 years hiding, the way hiding had become so natural to me that it felt like breathing. Or I could open the door all the way and say, in whatever voice I had now, that's me. I'm the tenant. And I want you to understand how hard that choice was. Every cell in my body was screaming at me to close the door, to go back to the safety of invisibility. And I opened the door all the way anyway. I opened it because I had made a promise to the woman in the mirror, and I was not going to break it on the first test. And I said, that's me. I'm the tenant. And the voice that came out of my mouth was not the voice I had practiced in the mirror for 20 years. It was softer. It was higher. It was mine in a way that made my knees weak, in a way that made the whole room tilt. And Mr. Delgado blinked, and then he smiled, and he said, oh, you must be the sister your brother mentioned. Well, he never mentioned you. But you're welcome, miss. Come by the office if the pipe gives you trouble. And he walked away, and I closed the door, and I slid down the back of it and sat on the floor and shook because I had just done the thing I had been afraid of my entire life. I had spoken out loud in the daylight as myself, and the world had not ended. The world had not even noticed. And that, more than anything, was the first lesson. The world is not watching you as closely as you think it is. Most people are too busy with their own lives to see yours. The ones who do see you, the ones who really look, the ones who stop and look twice and mean it, those are the ones worth keeping, and I would learn that lesson again and again in the weeks to come. The voice became my obsession after that. I want to tell you what I learned because I spent weeks on it, and I want you to have it faster than I did. The voice is not about pitch. That is the first thing everyone gets wrong. It is not about making your voice higher. A high voice with a man's resonance sounds like a man doing a high voice, and everyone can hear it, and it sounds like a costume. It is about resonance. It is about where the sound lives in your body. A man's voice lives in the chest. You can feel it rumble when you hum. You can feel the vibration in your sternum, like a second heartbeat. A woman's voice lives higher, in the mask of the face, in the nose and the sinuses and the front of the mouth, right behind your eyes. The trick that changed everything for me was this. Put your hand on your chest and hum a low note, and feel where it vibrates. Then hum a high note, and feel where the vibration moves, up, out of the chest, into the face, into the mask. The goal is to move the vibration. It is not about squeezing your throat. That is how you hurt yourself, and it sounds tight and fake, and it will make your voice crack and your confidence shatter. It is about breath. It is about speaking on an exhale, letting the air carry the sound forward instead of holding it back, letting the sound live in the front of your face instead of the bottom of your chest. I practiced in the shower, where the acoustics made it easier to hear myself, where the steam made it feel private and safe. I practiced in the car, where no one could see me, where I could repeat the same sentence 40 times without anyone hearing. I practiced with the radio, repeating the news anchors, matching their rhythm, the way their sentences rise and fall, the way they breathe. And slowly, so slowly, I almost did not notice. The way you do not notice a plant growing, the voice stopped being a performance and started being mine. The day I stopped thinking about it was the day it became real. And that is the second lesson, and I want you to write it down somewhere because it is the lesson that will save you. The goal is not to sound like someone else. The goal is to sound like you, finally out loud. The goal is not to become a copy of a woman you admire. The goal is to become the woman you are, and to let her voice be her own. The wardrobe was the next battlefield. And I want to be honest with you because I know a lot of you are watching because you are exactly where I was, standing in front of a closet full of clothes that do not feel like you, terrified of the first step. Here is what I wish someone had told me, and I am telling you now so you do not have to learn it the hard way. Do not start with the fantasy. Do not start with the cocktail dress and the heels and the full face of makeup, because you will look in the mirror and you will not recognize yourself, and you will think you are failing when you are not. You are not failing. You're just starting in the wrong place. Start small. Start with fit. Fit is everything. I cannot say that enough. Fit is everything. A plain t-shirt that fits your shoulders and your waist will do more for you than the most expensive dress in the wrong size. The wrong size will make you look like you are wearing someone else's skin, and you will feel it, and everyone will see it. I learned to read my own body, where my shoulders were, where my waist wanted to be, what necklines balanced me, what lengths made my legs look right, what fabrics moved the way I wanted to move. I learned that the waist is the secret, that almost every body, no matter its shape, looks better when you define the waist, when you give the eye a place to rest, when you create that soft hourglass that says, I know my body and I am comfortable in it. I learned that color matters less than people think and confidence matters more. I learned that the mirror is a liar in the first hour and a friend in the 100th, that the first time you see yourself in something new you will see every flaw, and the 100th time you will see yourself. And I learned the hardest lesson of all. The first outfit that feels right will feel terrifying because it is honest, and honesty is the scariest thing in the world. I remember the first time I put on something that was actually mine. It was a simple thing, a soft blouse in a dusty blue, a pair of jeans that actually fit, a pair of flat shoes I had bought at a secondhand shop because I was too scared to go into a proper store, because I was too scared to stand in front of a saleswoman and ask for help. I put it on, and I stood in front of the mirror, and I did not look like a man in a costume. I looked like a woman who was still learning. I looked like a woman who had been hiding in a man's body for 31 years and had finally found the door. And I started to cry because it was the first time in my life that the person in the mirror looked like the person I had always known I was. It was the first time the outside matched the inside. And I understood, standing there in my tiny apartment, that this was not about the clothes. It was never about the clothes. The clothes were just the permission slip. They were the way I let myself be seen. They were the armor I put on so that the real me could step out into the world. And the moment I understood that, the fear started to loosen its grip, just a little, just enough to let me breathe, and I knew that the next step was going to be the hardest one of all. I was going to have to go outside. I was going to have to let the world see me. And I was going to have to tell the people I loved the truth, starting with the one person I had been hiding from my whole life, my mother. The phone call to my mother is a moment I will carry with me forever, and I want to tell you about it because I think it is the moment so many of you are dreading, the moment you have played out in your head 1,000 times, the moment that keeps you awake at night. And I want you to know that you can survive it. I dialed her number 7 times before I let it ring. 7 times. My finger hovered over the call button, and I rehearsed 100 versions of the conversation, and none of them felt right, because there is no right way to tell the person who raised you that the child they raised was not the whole story. There is no right way to say the words that have been sitting in your throat for 30 years. I almost put the phone down for good. And then I thought about the woman in the mirror and the promise I had made her, and I pressed the button. When she finally answered, her voice was exactly the same as it had been my whole life, warm, a little tired, asking if I had eaten, asking if I was coming home for the holidays, asking the questions that mothers ask because those are the questions they know how to ask. And I sat there in my apartment in my dusty blue blouse and I said, Mom, I have to tell you something and I need you to just listen and I need you to know that I am still me. I am still your child. I have always been your child. But I have to tell you the truth now because I cannot carry it anymore. And I told her everything. Not the fantasy version, not the softened version, but the truth. That I had known since I was a child, that I had hidden it for 31 years, that I had changed, that I was changing, that the person she was talking to right now was her daughter, and that I was terrified she would not want her. And there was a silence on the other end of the line, a long, terrible silence, the kind where you can hear the whole world holding its breath, the kind where you can hear your own heartbeat in your ears like a drum. And then my mother said, in a voice I had never heard her use before, a voice that was trying very hard to be steady and not quite succeeding, I need to see you. I need to see you with my own eyes. I need to look at you and see that you are okay.
Come home.
Please come home. And she hung up. And I sat there holding the phone, not knowing if that was a beginning or an ending, not knowing if I was walking toward love or toward loss, and I understood that the hardest conversations are not the ones you have with the world. They are the ones you have with the people who made you. And I knew that I was going to have to go home, and that whatever happened there would decide everything that came after. The drive home took 4 hours, and I spent all 4 of them terrified. I had told myself I would go as myself. No hiding, no costume, no pretending, but as the familiar roads started to appear, the roads I had driven 1,000 times as a boy, the roads that smelled like pine and wet earth and home, The fear came back so hard I almost turned the car around 3 times. I pulled into the driveway of the house I grew up in, and I sat in the car for a long time, looking at the front door, at the porch where I had learned to ride a bike, at the window of the room that used to be mine, at the tree I had climbed when I was 9 years old to get away from the world. And I thought about how strange it was that the place that had made me was also the place I was most afraid to be seen. My mother opened the door before I could knock. She stood there in her apron, and she looked at me, really looked, the way only a mother can look, the way a mother looks at a child she has been carrying in her heart since before the child was born. And I saw her eyes move over my face, my hair, my shoulders, my hands, and I saw her take a breath, and I braced myself for whatever was coming. I braced myself for the worst, because that is what fear does. That is what the voice in your head does when it has been telling you for 30 years that you are wrong, that you are broken, that the people who love you will leave you, if they know the truth. And then she said, very quietly, "You have your grandmother's eyes." I never noticed until now. And she opened her arms, and I walked into them, and I cried into her shoulder in the doorway of the house I grew up in, and she held me, and she said, "I don't understand it. I don't understand any of it. But you are my child, and I am not going to lose you over something I don't understand. I am going to learn. Give me time and I will learn. Just give me time." And that was the moment I understood something that I want you to understand too, something that I think is the most important thing in this whole story. Acceptance is not a switch. It is not a door that opens all at once. It is a process, and it starts with love, and love is enough to begin with.
My mother did not understand me that day.
But she loved me, and she chose to learn, and that was enough. That was everything. And I want you to know, whoever you are, that you do not need everyone to understand you. You just need the people who love you to choose you. And if they do not choose you, if they cannot choose you, that is their loss, not yours, and it does not make you wrong. It makes them small. But the world outside that door was not my mother. And the next few weeks taught me the hardest lessons of all. The lessons about stares and whispers and the way the world treats a body that does not fit its expectations. I want to tell you about the stares because I think it is the thing that scares people the most, the thing that keeps people in the closet, the thing that makes people decide that invisibility is better than visibility. And I want you to know the truth about them. The stares are real. They happen. There will be days when you walk into a room and you can feel every eye on you, and you will want to shrink, and you will want to run, and you will want to go back to being invisible because invisibility is safe and visibility is terrifying. I know. I have felt it. I have felt the weight of 100 eyes on my skin like a physical thing. But here is what I learned, and here is what I want you to learn so you do not have to suffer for it the way I did. The stares are not about you. They are about them. They are about people who have never had to think about their own body, encountering someone who has, and not knowing what to do with the feeling. They are about fear and curiosity and confusion, and none of that is your fault, and none of that is your burden. And the moment I understood that, the moment I stopped reading the stares as a verdict on me and started reading them as a question they were asking themselves, the stares lost their power. I learned to hold my head up. I learned to keep my shoulders back and my pace steady. I learned to look people in the eye and smile, because a smile is the most disarming thing in the world, because you cannot hate someone who looks you in the eye and smiles at you. I learned that the most powerful thing you can do when the whole room is looking at you is to not look away, because confidence is not the absence of fear. It is fear that has decided to keep walking anyway. And every time I did not look away, every time I kept walking, I got a little stronger. It is not a switch. It is a muscle. You build it one stair at a time, one room at a time, one day at a time, until one day you walk into a room and you do not even notice the stairs anymore because you are too busy being yourself. And then came the day that almost broke me. I want to tell you about it because I think it is important, because I think we do not talk enough about the days that almost break us, and I think you deserve to know that they happen to everyone, even the people who look like they have it all figured out. I was at a grocery store, just buying food, just living my life. Just being a woman buying vegetables on a Tuesday afternoon, when I heard a voice behind me, a voice I knew, a voice from before, from the life I had left, from the life I had buried. It was a man I had worked with for 6 years, a man who had known me as him, a man who had called me by my old name 1,000 times, a man who had sat next to me at 100 meetings and never once suspected a thing. And he said, "Hey, is that you?" And the whole world stopped. I could feel every muscle in my body freeze. I could feel the blood drain from my face. I could feel my heart trying to climb out of my chest. And I had a choice, right there in the frozen food aisle, with the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. I could turn around and deny it, and spend the rest of my life looking over my shoulder, afraid of every familiar voice. Or I could turn around and face him, and let whatever happen happen, and trust that I was strong enough to survive it. And I turned around, and I looked him in the eye, and I said, "Hi, it's me. I know this is probably a surprise." And he stared at me for a long moment, and I watched his face go through a whole journey, confusion, recognition, something I could not name, something that looked almost like wonder. And then he said, You look happy. I've never seen you look happy." And he smiled, a real smile, the kind of smile you cannot fake, and he said, "Good for you, man. I mean, good for you." And he walked away, and I stood there in the frozen food aisle, shaking, holding a bag of frozen peas I had forgotten I was holding, and I understood that the moments I had been dreading my whole life were not going to be the disasters I had built them into in my head. They were going to be ordinary. They were going to be human. Most of them kind, some of them not, and I was going to survive all of it. And that was somehow the most terrifying and the most freeing thing of all. But I have to be honest with you because this story is not a fairy tale, and I promised myself I would tell it true. There were days after that when I wanted to give up. There were days when I stood in front of the mirror and I did not see her. I saw the man I used to be, staring back at me like a ghost, and I wondered if I had made a terrible mistake. There were days when I missed the simplicity of being invisible, when I missed the life I had before, even though that life had been a lie, even though that life had been slowly killing me. There were days when I looked at old photographs of myself, and I felt a grief so deep I could not name it, grief for the boy in those photographs, grief for all the years he spent hiding, grief for the life he never got to live. And there was one night I will never forget, when I sat on the floor of my bathroom, in the dark, with the light off and the door locked, and I cried until I had nothing left, and I asked myself the question that I think everyone who has ever changed asks themselves at least once, the question that lives in the dark with you. What if I am not strong enough for this? What if I am not brave enough? What if I was better off before? What if I am just making a mistake that I cannot take back? And I want you to know that if you have asked yourself that question, you are not alone. You are not broken. You are not failing. You are doing the hardest thing a human being can do, which is becoming yourself in a world that did not ask you to, and it is supposed to be hard. It is hard for everyone. The people who look like they have it all together, I promise you they have had nights on the bathroom floor too. And they got up anyway. And so did I. I sat on that bathroom floor until the crying stopped, and then I got up and I washed my face and I looked in the mirror, the cracked mirror, the one I had thrown a shoe at, and I said out loud, to the woman looking back at me, "We are not giving up. We have come too far to give up. We are going to keep going, and we are going to be okay." And I did not believe it yet. I said it anyway. And saying it anyway was the beginning of believing it. The turn came on an ordinary morning, in an ordinary way. I was standing in front of the mirror, the same mirror, the one with the cracked corner, and I was about to start my routine, and I caught my own eye, and for the first time in weeks, I did not look away. I looked at her. I looked at the woman in the mirror, and I saw all the things I had been telling myself were wrong with her, the shoulders that were still a little broad, the jaw that was still a little strong, the voice that was still a little rough around the edges, the hands that were still a little big, and I understood in a way that I cannot fully explain that those things were not flaws. They were her history. They were the map of everything she had survived to get here. They were the proof that she had been through the fire and come out the other side. Every woman's body is a map of her history, and her history included 31 years of hiding, and that was not something to be ashamed of. It was something to honor. And I said out loud, to the woman in the mirror, "You are not a mistake. You are not a costume. You are not a phase. You are not a fantasy. You are mine, and I am keeping you. You are real, and I am keeping you. You are the truest thing about me, and I am keeping you." And something shifted inside me, the same way it had shifted on that Tuesday night when the switch happened, a key turning in a lock I did not know I had, a door opening somewhere deep inside me. And I understood that the change was never going to stop, that my body was going to keep changing, that I was going to keep changing, that I would be changing for the rest of my life, and that was not something to be afraid of. That was the whole point. That was the whole beautiful, terrifying, impossible point. I was not becoming someone else. I was finally, after 31 years, becoming myself. And that was the moment everything started to change for real. And that is when everything started to change for real. Not the body. The body had been changing all along, and it would keep changing, and I finally understood that that was the point, that the body is never finished, that we are all always becoming. What changed was me. I stopped treating my life like a test I was failing and started treating it like a life I was living. I stopped measuring myself against some impossible image of what a woman should be and started measuring myself against who I was yesterday. I started learning for real. I want to tell you what I learned in those months, because I think it is the part of the story that might actually help you, and I want to give it to you the way I wish someone had given it to me, so you do not have to stumble through the dark the way I did. I learned that posture is everything, that the way you hold your shoulders changes the way the whole world treats you, that a woman who stands tall and soft and open is read completely differently than a woman who shrinks and hides, that the body speaks before you ever open your mouth. I learned to stand with my weight evenly on both feet, my shoulders back and down, my chin up, my spine long, not stiff, not rigid, but tall and soft and open, like I was not afraid of the space I was taking up. I learned to walk from my hips, not my shoulders, to let my arms swing naturally, to move through the world like I belonged in it, because I did. I learned that sitting is a skill, that the way you cross your legs, the way you hold your hands, the way you place your bag, all of it sends a signal, and that the signal you want to send is, I am comfortable in my own skin. I am not hiding. I am not apologizing. I am here. I learned that makeup is not about covering yourself up. It is about showing the world the version of you that you want it to see, and that a little goes a long way, and that the most important thing is not the products but the practice, the hours you put in front of the mirror until your hand knows what to do without your brain having to think about it. And I learned, most of all, that confidence is not something you are born with. It is something you build, one small brave moment at a time, until the small brave moments start to add up to a life. It is built in the grocery store, in the coffee shop, in the elevator, in every small, ordinary moment where you choose to be yourself instead of hiding. And every time you choose to be yourself, you get a little stronger. That is the secret. There is no magic moment where you suddenly become confident. There is only the accumulation of 1,000 small brave choices, and one day you look back and realize you have become the person you were pretending to be, and you were not pretending anymore. The day that proved it to me was my cousin's wedding. I had been dreading it for months. 150 people, most of them family, most of them people who had known me my whole life as him, people who had bounced me on their knees when I was a baby, people who had watched me grow up, people who had their own ideas about who I was. My mother had asked me, gently, if I wanted to come, and I had said yes before I could think about what I was agreeing to, and then I had spent 3 weeks panicking about it. 3 weeks of lying awake at night. 3 weeks of almost calling her back to say I could not do it. 3 weeks of telling myself I was not brave enough, that I would ruin the wedding, that I would make everyone uncomfortable, that I should just stay home and let them have their day without me. And I want you to understand what that day meant to me, because I think it is the day I stopped being afraid. I spent the whole morning getting ready. I did my hair, and I did my makeup, carefully, patiently, the way I had practiced 100 times, the way I had learned to do it in the dark with the door locked, except now the door was open and the light was on. And I put on the dress I had bought for the occasion, a deep green dress that fit me properly, that made me feel like myself, and I stood in front of the mirror, and I looked at her and I said, okay, let's go show them who you are. And I walked into that wedding, into that room full of 150 people who had known me my whole life, and I felt every single eye on me, and my heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears, and I wanted to run. Every cell in my body wanted to run. And I did not run. I held my head up. I kept my shoulders back. I walked to my mother, who was standing by the door, and I saw her eyes fill with tears, and she took my hand, and she squeezed it, and she whispered, "You are so beautiful." And that was the moment. That was the moment I understood that everything I had been through, every night of practice, every tear, every moment of doubt, every night on the bathroom floor, had been worth it. Because I was not hiding anymore. I was not pretending anymore. I was standing in a room full of people who had known me my whole life, as myself, and I was not running. And I want you to know that that moment is out there waiting for you too. It might not be a wedding. It might be a coffee shop. It might be a job interview. It might be a family dinner. But it is out there. That moment where you realize you are not running anymore, and it is worth everything it costs to get there. The wedding was not perfect. I want you to know that too, because I think it is important, because I think we are sold a lie that once you accept yourself, everything is easy, and that is not true, and I do not want you to be blindsided by it the way I was. There was an aunt who stared at me all night with a face like stone. There was a cousin who pulled my mother aside, and I could see them arguing, could see my mother's jaw set in that way it sets when she has decided something and will not be moved, could see the cousin storming off, and my mother coming back to me and squeezing my hand and saying, "Don't you worry about her.
She has always been like that."
She was like that before you were born. There were whispers, and there were looks, and there were moments when I felt the old fear clawing at my throat, when I wanted to find a corner and hide. But there was also this, my grandmother, who is 82 years old and does not understand any of this, who has never in her life heard the word transgender and would not know what to do with it if she had. My grandmother took my hand across the table, and she looked at me and she said, "You look like your mother did when she was young. You have her light." And she did not understand. She will never fully understand. She does not have the words for it. But she saw me and she loved me and she told me I had light, and that was enough. And I understood, sitting at that table, with the music playing and the family laughing and the aunt staring and my mother squeezing my hand, that that is what acceptance looks like in the real world. It is not a parade and a standing ovation. It is an old woman holding your hand and telling you that you have light. It is a mother who does not understand, but will not lose you. It is a coworker in a frozen food aisle telling you that you look happy. It is a landlord who thinks you are your own sister and does not care either way. It is 100 small moments of being seen, adding up to a life. And that is enough. That is more than enough. That is everything. And now I am here, telling you this story. And I want you to understand who I am telling it to. I am telling it to the person who is watching this in the dark, on a phone with the door locked, the way I used to watch videos in the dark with the door locked. I am telling it to the person who has never said the words out loud, who has never let anyone see, who has spent their whole life standing in front of a mirror practicing a voice that was not theirs, wondering if they will ever be brave enough. I am telling it to the person who is afraid that if they change, they will lose everyone they love. I am telling it to the person who is afraid that they are too old, or too late, or too broken, or too scared. I am telling it to you. And I want you to know 3 things. The first is this: you are not alone. I know it feels like you are. I know it feels like no one in the world is carrying what you are carrying, like you are the only one in the whole world who feels this way. But there are millions of us. We are everywhere. In every city, in every town, in every family, in every frozen food aisle. We have survived the nights on the bathroom floor, and we are still here, and we are still becoming. We are your neighbors and your coworkers and your teachers and your friends, and most of us you will never know are us, because we have learned to be invisible. But we are here. And you are one of us, whether you have taken a single step or not, whether you have said a single word out loud or not, whether you are watching this with the door locked and the lights off or standing in the middle of a crowded room. You are one of us, and you are not alone. The second thing is this: you do not have to have it all figured out. You do not have to know exactly who you are, or what you want, or where this is going. You do not have to have a name picked out, or a plan, or a timeline. You just have to take the next small step. That is all. One small step. Try on the thing that scares you. Say the words out loud in the privacy of your own room. Tell one person you trust. You do not have to do it all at once. You just have to do the next small thing, and then the next, and then the next, and one day you will look up and realize you have walked 1,000 miles. And the third thing is this, and I want you to hear it, really hear it, because it is the thing I needed to hear more than anything when I was 14 years old and terrified and sure that I was the only one. The person you are becoming was always in you. The body changes. The voice changes. The clothes change. The name changes. The life changes. But the person, the real person, the one who has been there since the beginning, the one who knew before anyone else knew, the one who has been waiting in the dark with the door locked. That person was always there. You're not becoming someone new. You are finally letting the person you have always been breathe. You're finally opening the door and letting her out into the light. And she has been waiting for you your whole life. The mirror in my apartment still has the cracked corner. I have never fixed it, and I never will. It reminds me of the night I threw a shoe at it in frustration, the night I was so angry at myself for being what I was that I wanted to break my own reflection, the night I wanted to destroy the only mirror that had ever told me the truth. And now, every morning, I stand in front of that cracked mirror, and I look at the woman looking back at me, and I thank her. I thank her for waiting. I thank her for not giving up. I thank her for surviving 31 years of silence so that she could finally speak. I thank her for every night she stood in front of this mirror and practiced, for every tear she cried in the dark, for every time she got back up off the bathroom floor. And I say the words out loud, the ones I could never say before, the ones that belong to me now. I am here. I am real. I am her. And the woman in the mirror smiles, and I smile back, and I know, in the way that I have never known anything before, that this is not the end of a story. The body is still changing. It will always be changing. That is the point. That is the whole beautiful, terrifying, impossible point. The change is not something that happened to me. The change is me. And I am not afraid anymore. I am not afraid of the mirror. I am not afraid of the stairs. I am not afraid of the voice that comes out of my mouth when I speak, because it is mine, and I have earned it, and I am keeping it. And wherever you are, whoever you are, whatever you are carrying in the dark with the door locked, I want you to know that you can do this.
You can take the next step.
You can let yourself be seen. You can open the door. And when you do, when you finally stand in front of your own cracked mirror and look at the person who has been waiting for you your whole life, I hope you will say the words I say every morning. I am here. I am real. I am her. And I am not going back.